Welcome into another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here with our final positional ranking in the 2025 NFL Draft. Our top 10 safeties in this year's draft. And Dalton, I think it's a pretty good safety class, honestly, especially at the top of this draft. I think the first 5 or so safeties could be really impact players in the NFL.
Yeah, I think so, and then it's going to be a matter of digging through the later parts of this class and figuring out who those impact players could be on day 3, and I think that's where we could have a difference in opinion a little bit. There's a lot of different types of players, but you mentioned it, the top is very, very talented, even if it does come with some different styles.
Absolutely. Again, our top 10 safeties in this year's draft, we're going to break them down using the tape analysis with the guys we watched, and of course, PFF exclusive stats that are all available to you guys at subscribe.pff.com for every stat on every player in college football, the NFL, and of course, this year's draft. You, of course, get access to our 2025 NFL mock draft simulator with those stats as well, and you get access to the 2025 NFL draft guide with that PFF Plus subscription. Again, subscribe.pff.com to get access to all of that today. All right, Dalton, let's go over our top 10 safeties in the draft. Let's start off with a sleeper in this class. Who's a guy that's not in your top 10, likely to go on day 3 of the draft, but still a guy that you really like?
So a guy I have at 11, and Trevor's actually considering him a nickel player, so he wasn't in his top 10 safeties, but I was so close to making him number 10. I was back and forth. I had this debate, but I'm going to talk about him anyway. Billy Bowman from Oklahoma, and I think you're just talking about one of these guys is the riverboat gambler of the class, right? He's all about the football all the time. There's sometimes I watch him, and I see even a little bit of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, different builds, a little bit different style, but when you talk about a player who just wants to get after the football all the time and force turnovers, that's Billy Bowman, right? So, would it shock me if there was a year where Bowman just out of nowhere led the league in interceptions? That actually wouldn't shock me all that much. It's just what you get in between from him is some mistakes, a lot of missed tackles. He's not a great tackler, and someone who at times is just so aggressive that it works to his disadvantage, right? There's so much high risk, high reward, but I think there's a part where I felt the need to talk about him because it feels like he's, A, one of the most entertaining players in the class, and B, he's like one of the most stressful players in the class. He almost stresses me out watching him because any play he's on the field could be a touchdown for the offensive side or the defensive side, depending on which way he makes his read and if he makes it on time, and then obviously he's going to fly to the football. So Billy Bowman, look, he's someone I think that's going to go early on day 3. Maybe he even gets into round 3 consideration if a team really likes that ball hawking ability and they can rein him in a little bit, but someone definitely worth talking about because turnovers are such a big part of the game now, and if you can force them, you flip the games upside down, and that's what Billy Bowman wants to do.
Yeah, I actually did the Billy Bowman write-up for the draft guide. I think I put down in the draft guide, it's called safety, but he is not a safe player at all. He is a guy that is, like I said, is very much a risk taker, and that works out sometimes for him as well, right? He has 11 interceptions over the last 3 years of college football, so he's a big-time ball hawk in this class. The tackling is a big problem with him right now, though, as well. And like I said, he takes too many chances in coverage. So, again, not a guy that you are going to trust to take, to keep the defense safe back there, but I do think he's a playmaker and on the back end of the defense, and a guy that I still like in this class. I have him as a top 15 safety in this draft. My number 11 safety in the draft, though, Dalton, is another guy who's more of a nickel player, and that's Sebastian Castro, the corner/safety out of Iowa. Now, I mentioned that he's a corner. In 2023, he was arguably the best slot cornerback in college football. He had a 91.2 PFF grade that year, 91.2 coverage grade, 86.2 run defense grade. He's a very physical player in run support. He's a very smart player in zone coverage as well in that Iowa defense. He identifies route combinations very, very well, and he plays with a lot of urgency. Now, what are the issues with Sebastian Castro? He's a well below average athlete. He's 5'11", 203 pounds. If you want to play him at safety, that's below average size for a safety. His vertical jump was in the 3rd percentile, 19th percentile short shuttle, 25th percentile broad jump, and he ran a 4.59 in the 40-yard dash. He kind of lacks the range to be a true safety, a true free safety in the NFL, and also there's some question marks with him, his ability to stick to receivers in man coverage as a slot corner because of those measurables as well. He wasn't really as good in man coverage at Iowa, but they played a lot of zone at Iowa. And his play dropped this past year, only had a 66 PFF grade after having a 91 PFF grade the year before. But listen, well below average athlete, might only be a slot corner for some zone-heavy teams, but he's a very, very smart player as a zone slot corner, and he's a very willing run defender that can kind of make up for those lack of tools right there. So I still like Sebastian Castro, but just not a very athletic player, and he's very scheme dependent, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in a defense that you're talking about similar to Phil Parker's Iowa system, a lot of quarters, a lot of zone, a lot of just reading and reacting in the shorter areas of the field. I think about Robert Saleh's defense in San Francisco, a little bit of Matt Eberflus maybe in Dallas, somewhere where he can fit in that slot corner, maybe a safety role as well. Obviously going to get a role on special teams, but that's the big concern is you don't want to have him out there in man coverage, and if he does get back there and play safety, I don't think there's any chance you have him back there in any single high scenarios. He's going to need to drive downhill on the football. I'm with you. It's just Castro's such a tweener, and I love him as a football player. I actually met him when we were down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl,
nice.
And he's just a great kid and just understands the game and what his job is at all times, and that's how they teach him over there at Iowa. That's why you get so many good, disciplined football players there. It's just a matter of finding his position and finding an ideal role to kind of hide that average to below average athleticism.
All right, let's get into our top 10 safeties in this year's draft now. Dalton, you have one guy in your top 10 that's not in my top 10, and of course, I have one guy in my top 10 that's also not in your top 10. So tell me more about your number 10 safety in this draft. That is Craig Woodson from California.
Yeah, this is someone Trevor actually has as his number 10 safety also, and I think just a little bit safer than Bowman. It was the debate between him and Bowman at number 10 for me. I left Bowman at number 11, but Woodson, a fast, aggressive player that likes to play down close to the line of scrimmage. A lot of experience there at Cal. You see the rest of my top 10 there. We'll get to that. Malachi Moore at 9, Jonas Sanker at 8, Lathan Ransom at 7, and R.J. Mickens, who I really like, at 6. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but Woodson, kind of just that helpful box safety that helps in the run game. I think in zone coverage, another player is a lot better there. It's tough for me to trust him also man-to-man in the slot. Obviously, he's a safety. It's not as much of a conversation as it would be with somebody like Castro who played the nickel so much, but I think there are moments of aggression, and he's got good makeup speed where Woodson can be a solid, maybe eventually an average starter, in a defense that runs, again, a zone-heavier scheme that allows him to float around the box a little bit more. He doesn't make a ton of plays back deep, but I think you're getting kind of a easily projectable, just, okay, help me out, average box safety who's a good tackler and has good speed.
Yeah, I like Craig Woodson as well. Another box safety that I have in my top 10, Dalton, that you do not have in your top 10 is Hunter Woehler from Wisconsin. I have him at number 7 on my list. My number 10 guys, Jonas Sanker from Virginia, number 9, Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, 8, R.J. Mickens from Clemson, 7, Hunter Woehler from Wisconsin, and number 6 was Malachi Moore from Alabama. So I'll talk about Woehler a little bit more. Again, good size for a box safety, 6'2", 213 pounds. He's a 90 coverage grade over the last 2 years and an 82 run defense grade in that same span. He's an excellent tackler. 8.5% missed tackle rate over the last 2 years. That's in the 89th percentile of all safeties in the country. Good ball skills, has 9 forced incompletions as well. Over the last 2 years, he's a great motor who's constantly around the football, and he can line up in man coverage against tight ends due to his size and strength and decent movement ability. Now, kind of average speed and burst that kind of limits him only to being a box safety. He only ran a 4.57 in the 40-yard dash in the 49th percentile. He had a 45th percentile broad jump as well. Kind of lacks fluidity, flipping his hips as well. So if you put him back at free safety, starts to see a little more of the warts in his coverage play there, and it kind of limits him in man coverage as well. He's not as strong at getting off blocks as you would think for a safety of his size and caliber in run defense, and also kind of like the guy I was talking about before, Sebastian Castro, his play kind of dipped as a senior. He had a 71 PFF grade compared to an 89 PFF grade the year before, but again, he's not the most athletic player, a little bit like Sebastian Castro. He's probably just a box safety in the NFL, and his tape wasn't as good as it was last year, but he's a really, really good motor, adequate enough athleticism for his size. I think it could be a depth box safety for a team in the NFL and could be an impact special teamer for a team too.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on Woehler than you are. I have him at 12. I think it's just the lack of fluidity and explosiveness in coverage. I think his first step is a bit slow, and that's why you see the slower 40 time at 4.57. The way he plays, if he wouldn't lose a half step to maybe a step, he weighed in, I believe, at the combine at 218. I'm not sure if he played heavier than that, but if he were 15 pounds heavier, I think I would just put him at linebacker and just go about it like that because he's a very consistent run defender. I'm with you. He's a really good tackler. He's a guy that you want down in the box like that. He's a guy, he's not quite as athletic, but I look at him in a similar way, almost to the way I looked at Jaden Hicks last year, and I was a little worried again about the fluidity and coverage and his ability to turn and move in the deeper parts of the field. But that's where I'm a little bit lower on Woehler, is I do think there's a little bit too much where his game is angled into the box as opposed to, I only saw him make maybe a couple of plays back deep when I was watching his tape. I think this is someone who's very much a tweener. I think he's got a linebacker style to him and not enough athleticism to stay at safety and help you back deep. I think is he going to help you on special teams? Absolutely, because he's a really good tackler and he's a good athlete, but I think you're talking about a guy for me that sits in between, and if I could put 10 to 15 more pounds on him and see if that playing weight could help, I might just move him to linebacker.
Yeah, and listen, our guys from number 6 to 10 probably in these rankings, I think we'd all consider them to be probably day 3 prospects, right, in the NFL draft. And if you're a day 3 prospect, you're probably going to have to contribute to special teams to make a roster. So I think Hunter Woehler could make a roster doing that, because I do love his motor. And like I said before, he was an excellent player in 2023 for the Badgers. All right, let's get to another guy, Dalton. I have at number 10. You have at number 8 in this class. That is Jonas Sanker from Virginia. This guy has no athletic concerns, really. Good range for the position, 4.48, 40-yard dash, 94th percentile 10-yard split, 90th percentile broad jump. Very active player downhill in the run game. Has a 96th percentile stop rate over the last 2 years. He's an above average tackler as well. And he's a smart player, I thought, in coverage. He kind of anticipates routes very, very well in zone coverage and has the athletic traits to man up on tight ends in man coverage. He has 12 forced incompletions over the last 2 years. Very energetic player overall. And some of these guys that we're talking about today, like Hunter Woehler, didn't really play much special teams at Wisconsin. Jonas Sanker did, and he was an impact special teamer for the Virginia Cavaliers in his career. Only a 66 run defense grade, though, in his over the last 2 years, despite being a good tackler and downhill player. That's really because he takes inconsistent angles to the football. He's not really very good at getting off blocks either, and sometimes gets lost on play action and loses his coverage assignment back there as well, which is why he had a 74 coverage grade this past year. But excellent energy, above average athlete. He's probably best as a free safety / slot corner in the NFL, but you kind of have to rein in the aggressiveness as both a run defender, tackler, and coverage player to be more than just a backup or special teamer in the NFL, I thought.
Yeah, I think you could see some similarities to former Virginia safety for the Chiefs now, Shamari Connor, right?
Yeah.
And I think even in style, he's a lot similar to a player, as I just mentioned, Craig Woodson is. I have him a couple of spots higher because I think Sanker's a little bit better version of it, but you mentioned it. Aggressive in the box, gets downhill in zone coverage, good speed, urgent to the football at all times, whether the ball's in the air or on the ground. You have to like that a lot. I think you mentioned the two things as well. Doesn't really know how to attack blockers. I don't think it's a matter of a lack of physicality when tackling ball carriers. I don't think there's any issue there, but he doesn't have much of a plan when it comes to attacking blockers. And if you're going to play in the box and be that strong safety, that maybe that, quasi extra third linebacker in there, you have to have an idea of how to attack blockers or at least how to get around them and have that plan of attack and keep those angles. And the other thing you mentioned too, eye discipline. I think play action, keeping his eye discipline in that zone coverage. Sometimes there's times when he can drift a little bit, just staring at the quarterback. Guys even kind of subconsciously don't even catch themselves doing it. It's just their feet start to drift. They want to get to the football. It's this urgent style of playing, and then you lose somebody behind you. You lose somebody out towards the sideline. So, I think Sanker's a little bit better version of Woodson. That's why I have him there. I think it's a similar player. I think he could even find a similar role to what Shamari Connor has for the Chiefs, where you're really blowing up screens down there on early downs. You're helping in the run game, and then maybe you're back playing a deep half in obvious passing situations. Versatile player, good player. I think an early day 3 player, again, like some of these guys in this range are. You just got to fix the eye discipline and maybe get a little more aggressive when it comes to taking on blockers.
Definitely. And like I said before, he was a very good gunner on Virginia's special teams too. And for a guy who's going to be probably a day 3 pick, that's going to be very valuable for a team and probably going to lead to him keeping a roster spot for a team as well heading into his rookie year. All right, let's get to another guy, Dalton. You're a little higher on than me. You have at number 7. I have at number 9. And that is Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, one of the best run defending safeties in the draft. What do you like about him?
I think, look, you watch him at Ohio State, he's just been one of the most valuable pieces of their team for years, right? Whether it's in the slot, whether it's at safety. This year playing really more of a full-time safety role. And you mentioned, I think he led all safeties in the nation in run defense grade this year.
93.7, yeah.
You're just talking about, I think with Ransom, just a football player. Just a guy who loves hitting people, who who will do whatever. He'll play whatever role the coaches ask him to. Safety, slot. You want to put him down there at linebacker to help out. Special teams. He's done it all in his career at Ohio State, and I think you're getting really a tangibly high floor with Ransom when it comes to, okay, just bring this guy in, take him in the top 120, 130, and he's going to add something to your defensive back room, right? And I'll tell you the other thing, too, it's a lot of the clips that have been floating around lately, and it's true. If you have the football and Lathan Ransom's near you, you better hold on to it with two hands because this guy's looking to rip it out, punch it out, force turnovers in that way. I don't think he's quite as fluid in coverage as some of these other guys, but when you're talking about Ransom just kind of filling a jack-of-all-trades role in your secondary along with special teams, too, I think you're getting a good football player, a really good tackler, a really good run defender, and if he can expand the arsenal a little bit in coverage, get a little more fluid in coverage, then maybe he could be a three-down player like he was at Ohio State this past year, but if not, I think you're still getting a solid football player who's a really good depth piece at the least, and possibly a starter down the line.
His run defense tape this past year was the best of any safety, not only in the draft, but probably in the country as well. 93.7 run defense grade, again, led the nation for the position. 3 forced fumbles, like you mentioned before, 8 tackles for loss or no gain as well. He's a tone setter. He is extremely, extremely physical, not afraid of contact at all. Also in coverage, does a nice job of finding the ball in coverage. 12 forced completions over the last 4 years as well, and above average athletic traits. He ran a 4.53 in the 40-yard dash. He had above average marks in the vertical jump, broad jump, and short shuttle as well. Now, I don't think he's the smoothest coverage player overall. You kind of probably want him more as a box safety more than maybe a free safety or even a slot corner. He had a 66.5 coverage grade this past year and has had an issue being a little over aggressive as a tackler in the past as well. He has a 17% missed tackle rate since 2021. That's in the 13th percentile of all safeties in the country. So he's a very aggressive, physical safety who's a playmaker in the run game as well. Even though he's not the most efficient tackler in the run game, but he does have some limitations in coverage due to his average movement ability. But I think at worst, with his kind of mentality, again, another guy could be an impact special teamer in the NFL.
I think much like, again, I keep going back to Shamari Connor because I just love the way that Steve Spagnuolo uses all his defensive backs. But I think about in the same way, 2 roles for Lathan Ransom. You're either in the box and that robber role and helping out the run, or you're playing a deep half. And that's really what you got out of him from Ohio State this year. They had Jordan Hancock, who played really well in the slot, so Ransom didn't have to play in the slot as much. And I think, a guy like Hancock is a better man-to-man defender than Ransom is. Those are the situations I'm trying to avoid with him, those single coverage situations. But if he can be that strong safety, if he can help out in the box, and he can at least comfortably play a deep half and keep things from getting over the top, then you've got a good football player.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to a guy who I think is a big-time sleeper in this class. My number 6 safety in the draft, your number 9 safety, and even having him at 9, Dalton, is still higher than consensus for him. Malachi Moore out of Alabama. I love this guy, man. I had him number 6 in this class, and the top 5, I think, for almost everyone's going to be pretty similar, but I think after that, it starts to get more wide open, and for me, Malachi Moore's the next best of the bunch. He's an incredibly versatile defensive back. He thrived at slot corner and even free safety for Alabama. At free safety, 80.3 career coverage grade. At slot corner, 88.3 career coverage grade, a 91.8 career coverage grade overall for Malachi Moore. He has excellent awareness, instincts, and ball tracking ability in coverage. He has 24 forced incompletions in his career, and he's a willing run defender as well, with an 81 career run defense grade, 46 run defense stops in his career, 96th percentile among all safeties. Now, why is he a little bit lower and all those great numbers? He kind of lacks top-end physical traits. I think he's only 5'11", 196 pounds, with 2nd percentile arm length for the position as well, and he's more of an above-average athlete than really anything special at the safety position. But again, one of the more underrated players, I think, in this year's draft. He was a leader of the Crimson Tide's defense and was a versatile piece in their secondary. He's a high IQ player. He can play free safety for you. He can play slot corner for you. I think he could be a big surprise in the NFL and maybe could be a key contributor for a secondary, if not a long-term starter for a secondary. I love this guy's tape over the course of his career, Dalton, and I think people should be a little bit higher on him than they are right now.
So, yeah, I think he's a guy over the last 5 years. A couple of things jump out to me. One, look, he played 4 of his 5 seasons under Nick Saban at Alabama and stuck there, even though everyone else is transferring and getting drafted this first round.
He started his true freshman year for Nick Saban,
right,
too, which is rare.
Right. There's first-round picks coming in and out of that program left and right. He played with Pat Surtain, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion, Brian Branch, Jordan Battle, all the guys that we can think of the last 5 years, Trey Amos even before he transferred to Ole Miss, and Malachi Moore has played with all of them, and he's just got over 3,100 snaps of experience in an Alabama defense, with 4 out of those 5 years being under Nick Saban. And even this year, Kalen DeBoer moved him back to safety more so than the nickel like he'd been playing, and I thought he got even better. I think it was a great move for him. He doesn't have elite speed. That's the big thing that jumps out to me. You can tell he's a 4-5 guy instead of a 4-3 guy, so his angles and his reads have to be right because he can't make up for mistakes with the recovery speed. But this is a player who's, I think, very heady, a smart player who can play multiple roles, like you mentioned, he's got a lot of special teams experience as well. That's going to help him early to mid day 3 also. I just think you're talking about a solid, well-taught, well-rounded player, as it should be, coming from 5 years at Alabama and 4 under Nick Saban. And I do think it benefited him a lot to get back there and play more safety than he did nickel this year. He can still get down there and play man-to-man with pretty good technique, but when you see him in those situations against those faster players, I can even think about, I know it's tough, but reps against Malik Neighbors and guys like that, he doesn't have necessarily the speed to keep up like that. I think against slot receivers who aren't quite as blazing fast, or against tight ends, yeah, he could man up on him. And I think he's another guy, like we've talked about. I think a lot of these guys on this back end, Ransom, Sanker, Woodson, Moore, they're all players who just add something to your secondary, right? They raise the floor of it. It's something better than obviously a practice squad player if you're lacking depth in the secondary. This is a type of player you can take who can play multiple roles, and I think play, especially in Moore's case, fundamentally sound football is what I see from him.
Absolutely. On the consensus board right now, he's the number 12 safety in the draft, number 181 overall, which means he's an early 6th round prospect for most people.
I think you're getting a good player if you're getting him in that range. I really do. I mean, I think Moore is somebody at safety number 9. I might think about in the late 4th or 5th round. Sure, maybe we're around ahead of that, but I think you're getting just he's not the flashiest player for sure, but he's well taught. He plays like a professional, and obviously all of that time learning under Nick Saban and all those names that we mentioned that he's played with, he's had some darn good examples to learn from down there at Alabama. I think he's going to be at least a solid piece of a safety rotation.
I mean, my top 5 safeties I would take in the first 2 days of the draft, and like I said, he'd be my next up after that, so I would take this guy early 4th round probably, and the fact that you could probably get him in the early 6th round. Again, he's going to be one of the steals of the draft, I think. Malachi Moore is. Let's get to another guy, Dawn, that you and I both like as well. That is R.J. Mickens, who's your number 6 safety in the draft. My number 8 safety, the guy out of Clemson. What do you like about him?
I think we're going to start a late momentum train here for R.J. Mickens, because I'll tell you what, you watch certain players on a football field, and obviously we talk about some other coaches' sons like Shedeur Sanders and guys like that, right? But, look, R.J. Mickens played for the Jets for the most part in the late 90s. He was a 3rd-round pick back then. He was a nickel. You can just tell when he's out on the football field, he knows darn well what he's doing out there. Super, super high IQ football player. Took on a ton of responsibility. I just want to say for RJ, man, we talked about that Clemson secondary all year, right? Avion, Terrell, and all those guys that got back there, they were all true freshmen, true sophomores. Not only did he have a top 10 coverage grade in the country this year, he did it while he was surrounded by a whole bunch of kids that he basically had to take responsibility for. He was voted team captain, and this is just somebody in zone coverage especially that you want running the show on the back end of your defense. We're going to talk about Andrew Mukuba in a minute. I think his play style is very, very similar. Mukuba's a little more physically gifted, but Mickens' heady approach to the game, his vision in zone coverage, and just the way he is kind of the captain of the defense back there at safety, he's exactly what you want. You can tell he's got an NFL pedigree. Now, he doesn't have A-plus physicality. I won't say he's got A-plus speed, although I think he ran either it was 4.48 or 4.49 in the 40. I think it was at the combine he ran a 4.48. Sometimes he kind of ankle bites as a tackler, but I'll tell you what, in coverage, especially in zone coverages where he can rotate and kind of mess around a little bit like they did on the back end at Clemson, rotating the safeties, playing the robber, getting down in a hook curl. I don't think he's that comfortable as a single high free yet. I think he'd be a little bit better in a zone, like a heavier zone defense, 2 high or cover 3 base system. But look, Mickens, the more I watched him, maybe only once or twice all this season, you just don't see mental mistakes.
No.
You just see such a well-taught player, again, because his dad played in the NFL for a long time, and see if maybe he played with Aaron Glenn for a long time in the NFL back in the 90s. Maybe the New York Jets could get in on R.J. Mickens, keep the family going. But I think you've just got – this is a player where it's just this guy knows what he's doing back there. And again, the fact that that was such an essential piece for all of the guys that we talked about all season with Clemson's defense. Avion Terrell, right? Obviously, he's AJ's little brother. He's a talented player. Barrett Carter at linebacker. Peter Woods, TJ Parker.
Ashton Hampton, yeah.
Ashton Hampton. Wade Woodaz, DeMonte K. We talk about so many big names, and I look back on it now and I go, we did not talk about RJ Mickens enough during the season. And not only the production, because the grades and the stats are there, but the leadership role that he had to play. When you talk about Hampton was a true freshman this year, right?
Yep.
Avion Terrell was a true freshman this year, right? They had other true sophomores. He was a true sophomore. There was, freshmen and sophomores playing all over the place. Even in front of him with a guy like Sammy Brown playing linebacker as a true freshman, right? And Mickens, to me, the more you watch this Clemson defense, he was the glue that held the whole thing together. And I think even more so than his talent, and he is a talented football player, that's such a valuable piece when you're talking about that leadership role at safety and everything that he knew he had to be responsible for in coverage, and he did it to an absolute T. When I went back and watched him again through the full season, absolutely love him. I love RJ Mickens. I would actually consider him possibly even late on day 2.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't hate that at all either.
I think somewhere within the last, say 80, between 80 and 100 there on day 2, if I needed a safety and I was running the right system that could fit in his skill set, again, just decent speed at a high 4.4, but if I could fit him in, I'm taking this guy. I think he's going to be good.
He's even lower than Malachi Moore on the consensus board. He's number 198 overall.
No, that's I'll tell you right. For me, I know you're in on this with Malachi Moore. I think among this group and that ranking you just mentioned, that's the biggest blind spot. RJ Mickens is a guy you want on your football team ASAP.
So he's also like Malachi Moore, a 6th-round prospect, and I love RJ Mickens as well. He's the number 13 safety on the consensus board. I have number 8 in my rankings as well, so I'm higher on RJ Mickens than the consensus board as well. Just a versatile coverage defender, man. Can succeed at free safety, slot, or box. A 92.6 coverage grade since 2021 as well. You mentioned his dad, Ray Mickens, played corner in the NFL for 11 years. You could tell by how good RJ, his anticipation and his instincts are in coverage. His good length for position as well. His wingspan's in the 75th percentile. That shows up as a tackler. Only a 10% missed tackle rate in his career, as in the 81st percentile. He's a very technically sound player as a tackler as well. And you mentioned good speed, good explosiveness as well. He had a 4.49 40-yard dash, 41.5-inch vertical. That's 96th percentile for safeties as well. Now, I do think his agility is a little bit of a question mark. He's not the smoothest player in terms of flipping his hips and changing direction. He had a kind of a 22nd percentile 3-cone, 33rd percentile short shuttle as well, and kind of a smaller build at 6 feet tall, 199 pounds. He kind of struggles getting off blocks in the run game and not very powerful as a tackler with only a 69 run defense grade this past year. But NFL bloodlines, it's very, very clear by how he sees the game at such a high level. He has been an excellent chess piece and, like Dalton said, a leader in that secondary for multiple years. He's had 75-plus PFF grades 4 years in a row. That's very hard for defensive backs to do in a very volatile position. Even safeties, I know we talk about a lot for corners, but even safeties is very volatile. He still was very consistent player for Clemson for 4 years in that secondary. I do have some concerns about his transition to his size and agility, but he could be a starting player maybe down the road for a secondary. And if you're getting this guy in the 6th round of the draft, like Dalton said, I think this guy could be a steal as well.
I'll tell you, I can remember, I got a couple years on you for this one. I can remember playing Madden 2000, playing with the Jets, and Aaron Glenn and Ray Mickens both in their secondary. That's how old I feel now. That feels good. And I'm only 30, and I'm saying things like that, of course. But no, Mickens, I'll tell you what, I think the play style, especially because I think it's very similar, if you don't get Andrew Mukuba a round or 2 earlier, I think you're a perfect alternative as RJ Mickens. I think that's absolutely, we're going to talk about Mukuba in a second here, but I think they're very similar in style. Mukuba's a little more physical than Mickens is, which is why he's a little bit ahead, but I think Mickens is actually one of the hidden gems in this class.
So let's get to Andrew Mukuba. RJ Mickens' his former teammate, by the way, at Clemson. Andrew Mukuba going from Clemson over to Texas. I have at number 4 in my safety rankings to own, and you have at number 4 in your safety rankings. I think Andrew Mukuba is one of the most versatile defensive backs you're going to find in this year's draft. He played slot corner at Clemson. He became a true safety for Texas this past season, and he was fantastic this last year. You see right there a 90 PFF grade. He was the 3rd most valuable safety in America, according to our wins above average metric. Only a 15.5 passer rating allowed into his coverage this past year. He has great speed. He ran a 4.45 in the 40-yard dash. He changes direction very fluidly, shows up in his snaps as a slot and free safety. Very good ball skills as well. 15 forced incompletions in his career and 5 interceptions this past season. But he has a slight build. That's kind of the big negative with Andrew Mukuba right now. Only 186 pounds. It's in the first percentile. Kind of still built like a cornerback who's playing safety right now. 30-inch arms, that's 6th percentile as well. And his lack of size shows up a little bit in run defense. Over the last 2 years, he has over a 15% missed tackle rate. It's in the 25th percentile of all safeties. Now, he broke out at Texas playing more of a true free safety role. At Clemson, he was more of a solid player overall. He did 70.7 coverage grade at Clemson. But, again, that could be explained by him playing mostly slot corner at Clemson, whereas at Texas, he played more of a true free safety. Again, not much of a run defender, very undersized if you're playing him as a true safety, but he's a versatile chess piece in coverage, smooth movement skills, and really, really good ball skills. And he put up elite tape at Texas this past year. So I like Andrew Mukuba a lot.
You want something fun? Zone coverage grades for Power 5 safeties this year. R.J. Mickens 3rd, Andrew Mukuba 6th. 2 of the elite zone coverage players that we have. And Mukuba, look, when I watch this, similar thing too, because we came into this year talking about Texas going, hey, the big weakness is the pass defense. And hopefully Andrew Mukuba can, if he's moving to safety,
we were wrong about that.
Hopefully he can glue this thing together. And I'll tell you what, in the same way that I just mentioned for Mickens and Clemson, Mukuba he glued it all together. Obviously, Jahdae Barron was great on the outside, Thorpe Award winner, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taff also, Texas lifer over there next to him at safety. But Mukuba really held it all together. And I think you've got similar traits, excellent vision in zone coverage. And I'm just, more than anything, I am just so glad because there were some reps at Clemson where he played safety and he played well. They just didn't leave him back there. They didn't ever leave him back there, right? I think his freshman year more so, Trevor was telling me that was his highest graded season. That was the most snaps he played at safety. And Clemson just never saw that, hey, maybe this guy's a safety instead of a nickel, right? Or instead of a corner. Texas moves him to safety, and it's perfect. It's just absolutely perfect. I think he really found, even though he is undersized, you mentioned it, he's built like a corner. Sometimes when he tackles, you can tell he's built like a corner. But the fundamentals and the way he breaks on the ball, first of all, in zone coverage, fantastic. Same idea. If you can get him in that robber roll, if you can get him down in the curl flat, which has some similarities at times to when he was playing in the nickel and playing down low like that, that's fine. He's comfortable with it. He already knows he can do that. Now you're talking about a guy, you just teach him to play back deep, you get him a little bit stronger, you get him to be a little bit better tackler, and it's certainly not for a lack of effort. He's an absolute heat-seeking missile in the run game as well. It's just a matter of, okay, can the build hold up? But I'll tell you what, Mukuba could not have had a better senior season, transferring to a new place, playing a relatively new position that he hadn't played a ton more. I think there's more to go with him. I really do. I think that's why I have him 4th here, and it wouldn't shock me if he was even higher eventually on this list when we look back 3 years from now, because I think it's just getting started. This was only his first full year at safety, and he was one of the best safeties on the best secondary in the country.
Absolutely. I want to see him add a little bit more weight to his build right now to become more of a true safety, but you play him that role in the NFL, and I think he could be a really, really good player overall. Dalton, you and I disagree, and we actually hit my number 2 safety is your number 5 safety, and my number 5 safety is your number 2 safety. Before we get to those guys, though, and have kind of arguments about them, let's talk about the guy that we both agree on at number 3, and that is Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State. You and I are still very, very high on Kevin Winston Jr. He was damn near close to being my number 2 safety in this draft. Why is Kevin Winston Jr. should not be forgotten about in this class?
Well, I think if he was healthy this year and he didn't have the torn ACL and the surgery, I think he would have been a first-round pick. Yeah. I really do. I think you're talking about a guy, that 92.8 tackling grade, that stands out to me from 2023. He's only missed 2 tackles in his whole career at Penn State. Granted, that's 2 years and change, but I think you could argue he's the best tackler, not just at safety, at any position in this draft. That's a valuable skill. It is. And especially in college where it feels like there's times when nobody can tackle. Kevin Winston Jr. might be the best tackler in this whole class. I think when you're talking about the quintessential modern strong safety, great tackler, fantastic, arguably the best safety in this class in run support. Yeah. I could easily argue that. I think he's figuring it out in coverage. I think he's better right now, lower towards the line of scrimmage. Again, that cover 3 curl flat is somewhere I could see him absolutely making a living. And I think as far as I think he's got the speed. He ran a 4.4, was it 4.46 recently he ran at Penn State's pro day? I think he's got the speed to play back single high, but he doesn't have the experience yet. He's got to learn how to break and how to take some angles back there as a single high free safety. But But you're talking about a box safety. There's not many better in this class than Kevin Winston, and we just haven't seen him play this year. I was meaning to ask you, too, those first 2 games that he played this year, was the ACL already torn? Was he playing on it? Or did he tear it in the Bowling Green game?
No, he tore it in, I believe, in practice after the Bowling Green game.
Okay, I wasn't sure because he was still great in run defense in those 2 games, and the coverage was up and down, obviously. But it's early in the year, and he's not the most experienced elite coverage player yet, especially back deep. But you look at the speed, the athleticism, the tackling, the physicality. There's a lot to like with Kevin Winston Jr. Look, he's going to go because of the injury, and we'll see how the recovery process goes. Late in the second, maybe even early in the third round, that could be a steal because if he was healthy, I think he's a top 30 talent in this draft.
He's number 92 on the consensus board, which means he's right now a late third-round prospect. I think that's a steal.
That's an absolute steal if he goes in the third. I think there's even a couple of teams late in the second that should think about it. This guy's talent. You look at that 2023 season. Well, and Penn State's defense was really, obviously, elite-level stuff this year. Imagine if they had him in with it.
Yeah.
I don't know who would have scored on him.
I think, remember when we were doing our preview of every team in college football, and in those previews what we would do is we'd go, okay, let's break down the quarterback, let's break down the star offensive player, and let's break down the star defensive player for each team. For Penn State, you and I had an argument about whether or not it should be Kevin Winston Jr. for defensive player or Abdul Carter, who ended up being maybe the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft right now. That's how good Kevin Winston Jr. is, and honestly, I think I'm with you, dude. He would have been a first-round pick probably if he did not suffer that partially torn ACL and he had as good of a tape in his junior year as he was as a sophomore. And honestly, Dalton, if he had as good of a junior year as he did in last year, he would be my number 1 player at the position. The only thing holding him back from being my number 1 safety in this draft is coming off that partially torn ACL. But I'm a huge fan of this guy. He is hands down, like I said, hands down the best tackler at the safety position in this year's draft. One of the best tacklers in general in this draft. Perfect combination of aggressiveness and technique as a tackler. On 89 career tackle attempts, like Dalton said, he only missed 2 of them in his career. Ran a 4.5 40 coming off a partially torn ACL after only a few months after coming off that partially torn ACL. His ability to click and close is fantastic. He explodes downhill. Sideline to sideline range, has the makeup speed whenever he is beat as well. Fluid hips, he can turn and run in coverage very well, and he times his hands really well in coverage. He forces incompletions and has 0 career penalties as well. Partially torn ACL ended his junior year after only 2 games. Now I will say, I've heard rumors or reports that he could have played the rest of the season on that partially torn ACL and then got surgery after the season's over, which would have, dragged into his rookie year of the NFL. Instead, he opted to get surgery now and sit out the rest of the season and now be fully healthy for, the combine, for not the combine, but his pro day and going into his rookie year. So again, it's not as extreme as a fully torn ACL that would have knocked him out of the season. He had the decision of whether or not he wanted to play the rest of the year on the partially torn ACL or if he's got surgery now and do that. Again, only 1 interception in his career as well, not the best ball skills overall. And his reaction time can be a tick behind, even though he's got the athletic traits to make up for that. Again, first-round tape and athletic traits in 2023. His recent injury kind of muddles that a little bit, but he's a very, very good safety, one of the top safeties available if he could fully recover from that injury. I had Kenny Phillips as a comp to him right there. I love Kevin Winston Jr., man. He could have been my number 1 safety in the draft.
A couple of things. Running the 4 forward is pro day. That helps. That helps quell that concern a little bit. Obviously, change of direction goes a lot into that when you're talking about the ACL. But I just want to throw out there, look, I'm going to throw you some teams at the back end of the second round. You tell me who amongst this group wouldn't want this guy. Tampa Bay, 53. Buffalo, 56. Carolina, 57. Washington at 61. The Bills again at 62 if they want. The Eagles at 64. Any of those places at the back end of the second round, I'm thinking about it. The Buffalo Bills, are you kidding me? With 2 second-round picks back there, if they're not going to trade up in the first round, do anything, take the gamble. Take Kevin Winston Jr. That's a guy I think is perfect for their defense. I think he could make them a lot better. I think there's plenty of teams in the back end of the second round that would take him as an absolute steal.
If somehow he goes where consensus has him right now, I wrote an article breaking down for teams that only had 2 picks on day 1 and day 2, how they can nail the draft. And I had Minnesota going with a D tackle in the first round, and then if they somehow get him at number 97 overall.
Oh, that'd
be a dream.
If they didn't trade down, which I still obviously think is a very real possibility. Yeah. Let's say their draft haul was Walter Nolan, Kevin Winston.
Yeah.
That's a winner.
With only 2 picks in the first 2 days, you nailed that.
Yeah, you want to make only 2 picks out of the first 100. Yeah, I nailed it. If you got a Walter Nolan, let's say, and Kevin Winston, I'd be in on that for sure. I still think very real chance they trade down from 24, but they might not. If there's players they want, go ahead and take him. And if Winston were there at 97, man, there's a lot of teams that whiffed.
Like I said, he's number 92 consensus board right now, so it is possible he's available in that range. But even if they trade down from number 24 overall, you take Kevin Winston Jr., one of those picks you trade down for, right? So, I think just he's a guy that should go probably in the second round of this draft, and he might fall to the late third round of this draft, or even worse, maybe and falls to day 3 of the NFL draft. But I think Kevin Winston Jr., man, with those tools that he has and his tape that he showed in 2023, he's absolutely one of the best safeties in this draft and should not be forgotten about in this class. Let's get into those guys, though, now, Dalton, that you and I a little bit disagree on. I think we both like both of these players, but tell me why you have Xavier Watts as your number 2 safety in the draft.
I think he's the best single high safety in this class. I think the ball hawking ability and what he has shown us at Notre Dame the last couple of years, you're talking about a player who gets to the football. He got more physical this year. The problem in the past was angles and tackling. Still could do a little bit of work, but it was a lot better in 2024. I think you've seen his anticipation get better with each passing year, peaking obviously this year. And just you're talking about the backbone of that Notre Dame defense that wanted to play all the man coverage that they did. By the end of the year, they were playing more man coverage than any team in the country. And everybody talks about man coverage and corners and having great players like Sauce Gardner and Pat Surtain out there at corner, Travis Hunter, guys like that. But you need that free safety back there to be the backbone of the entire operation, to dissuade quarterbacks from the middle of the field and even further beyond the hashes, right? When you talk about, I think Watts has the top-end speed, the range to cover sideline to sideline. I think sometimes he's a little high in his stance, got to get out of his breaks a little quicker. Even with the tackling, it's an issue where he's not quite sitting down enough to break down and make tackles. He's 100 miles an hour to the football all the time. But I think, to me, when you talk about, hey, if there's a guy, I don't know about late first round, maybe some teams would think about it, but especially in the second round early, Jacksonville's a team they're picking in the mid-30s that I look at that could really use him. You want a guy back there at free safety that gets to the football and allows you to play single high and run support everywhere else. Xavier Watts is your guy. I'm all about it. 13 picks over the last 2 years. I understand some of them are right place, right time, but you also have to be in the right place at the right time. And we've seen other plays where he absolutely forces the action and attacks the football. So, yes, there's tackling concerns. Yes, I'd like to see him play a little bit lower in his stance. But as far as if you want to make your coverage unit better and more versatile, I'm taking Xavier Watts in the second round early.
He was listed as a wide receiver coming out of high school. You could totally tell why with the way his ball skills is. He has 13 picks, like you mentioned before, over the last 2 years. No other defensive player in college football has more than 9 interceptions over the last 2 years. He has 4 more interceptions than any other player in college football since 2023. Obviously, great hands are a big reason why for that. But like you said before as well, he has outstanding anticipation, outstanding intelligence that makes him, allow him to make breaks on the football like that. He's a very, very high IQ player with quick twitch. He diagnoses plays pre and post snap, makes plays on the football. He was really, really good when asked to cover man-to-man this past season, and he's versatile to win at free safety, where you probably want him in the NFL, but also some really good reps in the slot and in the box as well. Now, he improved, like Dalton said, this past year, but his main drawback is his tackling issues. He needs to take better angles, stay more unbalanced as a tackler. Sometimes gets caught flat-footed in coverage as well, not quick enough to recover when he's beat, and he's a little stiff when he's forced to flip his hips and change directions. But again, the best ball hawking safety in this draft. Great, a very high IQ player. Ability to break on the football is outstanding as well. He should be taken somewhere on day 2 of the draft, even with his tackling problems. And I had a Juan Thornhill comp for him, Dalton. I'm a huge fan of Xavier Watts. Again, a little lower because of the tackling, and I don't think he's as athletic as other safeties in this class, but I'm still a big fan of him.
Perfect comp. That's perfect. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been a good player for a long time, and again, plays back deep, has enough speed to get after the football anywhere you're talking about on the field, and just not the best tackler, not the most physical player in the world. But if you have room in your secondary for a ball hawk like that can sit back and just watch the quarterback from the deeper parts of the field, like Juan Thornhill, like you mentioned for the Chiefs and the Browns all these years, I think it's exactly the guy you want. I look at Jacksonville at 36. I look at the Raiders at 37. 37. Even the Bears, if they're feeling that at 39 or 41 and they feel like, okay, Kevin Byard's a little older, Jaquan Brisker's got the injuries, I think there's a ton of teams in there in the 30s. You could see him go in the top 40. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in him, and I just think, again, you don't get that many players who make that big of an impact on the football as consistently as Watts does. It's the same reason I was talking about earlier with Billy Bowman. You just go, it's there. He can flip a game upside down at any point. Watts is the same way.
Absolutely. I think his mental speed kind of makes up for any lack of physical speed that he has out there as well. But Dalton, one guy that does not lack physical speed or any physical traits is my number 2 safety in the draft, and your number 5, Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. It looks like he's going to be a first-round pick alongside Malaki Starks right now in this year's draft. He is one of the most athletic safeties, not only in this draft, one of the most athletic safeties we've ever seen in an NFL draft. He's 6'3", 220 pounds, kind of built like a linebacker, 4.38 in the 40-yard dash. That's 96th percentile, even at that size for the position. 98th percentile vertical jump, 98th percentile broad jump. This guy has freakish athletic tools, and I think he's the best box safety that we have in this draft. 89.9 coverage grade in the box this last year. Really good ball skills, 9 forced completions and 6 interceptions in the last 2 years, and only a 7% missed tackle rate over the last 2 years, and then 96th percentile for all safeties. Now, his hips are a little stiff, which limits him from you ever being comfortable with him as a free safety. Despite having the range to play free safety, he's not as agile or as fluid as you'd want for a free safety. And his game kind of lacks some anticipation right now, which he makes up for with his freakish athletic tools to catch up. But in the NFL, you kind of want him to see things out before they happen a little bit more. But he's the most physically gifted safety in this draft due to his size, speed, and athletic traits. Is one of the most physically safeties we've ever seen, honestly, in the NFL draft as well. Size, length, and speed make up for some anticipation concerns right now, but he could be a Pro Bowl player, I think, if the game ever slows down for Nick Emmanwori. So again, the mental speed is still going to catch up a little bit, kind of the opposite of Xavier Watts right now, but if it does, he could be a really, really talented safety in the NFL.
He's certainly fascinating, and you mentioned it. The traits, I mean, there's nobody. You would argue even close. There's nobody even close when it comes to traits, athletic traits, and what he did at the combine. What he did at the combine was historic, but it's about what happens on the football field. And where I would worry the most is that lack of change of direction, that lack of fluidity in coverage. And you mentioned it. It's great to have great recovery speed, and he has that. He's got good long speed. You don't want to be recovering all the time, right? If you lack that anticipation and you lack the change of direction, right? Having, you might run a 4.3 and that guy might run a high 4.4 or 4.5, but if he's ahead of you, he's ahead of you, right? And there's only so many times, especially in the NFL, you're going to be able to make that up, right? Especially at safety when those receivers already have that momentum going, right? If Tyreek Hill gets that momentum going, you might be as fast as him in the 40. But if he's already moving and you're not out of your break, he's gone. It doesn't matter. So I think there's a part to me with Emmanwori. I understand why it's tantalizing. Absolutely. He's a big hitter, right? I think he could take on blockers a little bit better. I think he lacks a plan more so than anything. He's a big hitter. He wants to tackle. He wants to be in the box. He wants to be that extra linebacker. But this is the type of player, early in his career especially, that gets targeted in coverage because he doesn't flip and he doesn't turn and move well. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
He will be the target where you go, okay, yeah, this is a big guy, and obviously, he's got the long arms and you don't want to always throw it right within his range, but we can manipulate him a little bit and we can get behind him. And when you have a safety who you can sit there and confidently say, we can get behind him, that's a problem because the entire point of the name of the position is safety and the idea that nobody is supposed to be able to get behind you. So I'm in between. It's why I have Emmanwori at 5. I think there are if you have a team that already has a free safety of that caliber that can go back and just hunt for the football, say somebody like Xavier Watts, right, or a Juan Thornhill, like you mentioned. If you have that type of player that can support that, and you don't have to worry so much about Emmanwori being back deep, then fine. Take him. But if you're trying to rebuild your whole safety room from scratch, I don't know that this is the guy that I would take first and foremost to be like, okay, hey, you're going to do everything. Because right now I think the lack of fluidity and the lack of change of direction and agility and the ability to turn and run would concern me in coverage, because I think he would get targeted early and often.
I think it's fair. I think the only thing I would say to that, though, is you can mitigate a lot of that by just playing as a box safety. That's why I don't want him as a free safety at all. But I think more as a box safety, that's why I consider him as a number 2 safety in the draft, because if you want him in that role, I think he'd be a really good player in the NFL, and his weaknesses won't be as glaring as they would be as a free safety.
I'm looking. I think about, and I don't know if it would be first or second round, but say a team like Atlanta that's already sitting on Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates can do all the coverage things, right? Then I go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's an example where I go, cool. But the questions I have on him in coverage would make me hesitant to take him in the first round. I think there's some teams in the second round I would definitely look at and go, you know what, okay, it makes some sense. You got other guys there that could support that, right? Or I think, if you could even use them, if you're a team like Denver and you wanted to use them in a rotational role, right? And go, okay, you have Hufanga, you have Brandon Jones, and Brandon Jones especially is the big piece back there as the free safety. He's the guy that's going to be hunting the ball back deep. You can support that. If I'm a team like the Raiders, let's say, and I don't know, let's say I took Ashton Jeanty 6 overall, and then at 37, Emmanwori's sitting there, and I'm trying to rebuild my whole secondary, I don't know that it helps my coverage a whole lot in the immediate, right? I might rather have a Xavier Watts who I know, okay, he can cover, he can play back deep and be the backbone. So it depends. It's going to depend on situation, but I would be a little more afraid to take Emmanwori in the first round.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have him as a first-round prospect, but I do like Nick Emmanwori enough to take him just because the athletic tools are crazy. And like I said, as a box safety specifically, he's actually really good as a box safety. Do not want him as a free safety, though, or even a slot corner in the NFL because there's lack of fluidity in coverage, but I still like him a lot. The number 1 safety for both of us, Dalton, should not be surprised. He's probably going to be the first safety taken in this year's draft. That is Malaki Starks out of Georgia. What do you like about him?
Instincts, versatility. I think you have the most instinctual player at this position in this draft. I think there's a comp in the draft guide to Kevin Byard. I think that's absolutely right. When you talk about, you can ask Malaki Starks. A lot of these guys we've talked about, they're free safeties, they're boxes, or what. You can ask Malaki Starks to do anything, and he will do it successfully. Does he blow you away with speed or strength or size? Not necessarily. Not the toolsiest guy. We've already talked about Emmanwori with that. But I think with Starks, when you're just asking about just a malleable piece to add to any defense, I don't have any scheme fit or anywhere that he wouldn't fit, right? I think when you talk about a guy who can play back free, he can play in the slot, he'll tackle, he's a very good tackler even for, not being the biggest guy. I just think when you talk about his instincts, and I talk about being a step ahead, because he's what? I think he ran a 4.5 flat, right? When you talk about, okay, he doesn't have A+ speed, but this is someone who makes up for it with his instincts, with his jumps on the football, with his knowledge of offenses. That's what you want, is a safety who's a step ahead, and he cuts down those extra steps that faster guys might have on him, right? So he doesn't blow you away with tools, but he's got easily, I think, the best instincts of any player at this position in the draft, and he's so versatile that I don't feel like, hey, I need him to play for this team or get drafted into this spot.
Right.
You could draft Malaki Starks into any of the 32 defenses, and I would pretty much just go, all right, yeah, he made him better. Yeah, that's a talented player and a versatile player. His role can be so fluid within. I think about, again, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Winfield, the Steelers with Fitzpatrick, anywhere, Minnesota with Harrison Smith, or it doesn't even have to necessarily be paired with anybody. If a team was going to reset their secondary with Malaki Starks, then I can see it, because he can capably do anything on a football field, and I think that's a valuable tool to have.
I'm with you on that. I think this is a guy that you could plug and play into any defense in the NFL. If you already have a free safety and a box safety, but you're lacking a slot corner, I think Malaki Starks plays slot corner for you. If you're lacking a free safety, he could play free safety for you. Even if you're lacking a box safety, he has a physicality to play in the box for you as well. That's really the main calling card for Malaki Starks, is how versatile of a player he's been for Georgia his entire career. He's really good length for the position as well. 85th percentile wingspan really helps him in breaking up passes. Has 16 forced completions in his career and made some jaw-dropping interceptions in his career as well. Again, very versatile player, a really efficient tackler, which kind of helps out with his wingspan as well. 7% career missed tackle rate, is in the 97th percentile for his career, and a 90.3 run defense grade in his career as well. Smooth mover. He has great burst, really good speed. He had a 92nd percentile broad jump, 83rd percentile 10-yard split, and ran a 4.5 in the 40-yard dash, which is above average for a safety as well. Now, the weaknesses for him. The agility scores at the combine were not nearly as good, as some issues changing direction, which shows up sometimes when he's playing free safety back there. He had a 21st percentile 3-cone, 22nd percentile short shuttle, and he kind of had worse anticipation, I thought, this year than he did in past years. His coverage grade dropped to a 72 this past year, and he's not the biggest player overall, only 197 pounds, but again, I don't think Malaki Starks is a generational safety prospect like he was billed as coming into the summer. Everyone thought he'd be like, one of the best safeties we've seen, like Kyle Hamilton, for example, or even Caleb Downs, for example, next year I think would fit that billing. He's not that, but he's still a first-round caliber prospect as a safety, which is pretty rare nowadays. He's a very, very good safety prospect, not quite the generational one like a lot of people thought he would be going into the year. Very clean player overall, though, and like I said before, he could fill a variety of roles for a secondary and be an incredibly reliable run defender and tackler while still being a very good coverage player as well.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So going back and watching one final eval, you don't get the same feeling you got from Kyle Hamilton, from Derwin James, from Eric Berry. Those guys are legendary safety prospects. He's not quite that, but he could be a really good player in this league for a long time. And I think the Kevin Byard comparison, I think, still sticks for me. You know, Starks ran a 4.5 flat. Byard ran a 4.46. Good speed, not overwhelming speed like a guy like Nick Emmanwori. Starks is not going to be a guy that blows you away with traits, that blows you away with explosiveness. Or there's a couple crazy highlights, especially playing down there in the Georgia Dome, which could be fun again. Who knows? We'll see if he plays there more often. Maybe we see more of him.
Both of his unreal picks came in that same kind of in the same stadium.
Right.
Yeah. Against Oregon and Clemson. Yeah.
Imagine him with Jesse Bates in Atlanta. Wouldn't that be fun? I know they need pass rush, but it could be on the board. Raheem Morris likes his DBs. But anyway, I mean, look, Starks, you have to watch him snap after snap after snap after snap and see how many different roles he plays in this Georgia defense and how well how fundamentally sound he is and how ahead of the game he is when it comes to his reads. Because look, he played as a true freshman, true sophomore, true junior in an era where we've got 6th and 7th year guys playing in college football.
For Kirby Smart, too.
And for Kirby Smart in a very complicated defense where he is one of the main chess pieces of that defense. You're talking about a kid who is a true junior who knows football like the back of his hand and is arguably the smartest player on the field, even though he's one of the youngest players on the field. So Starks, he's going to be really good. You mentioned it. Not quite on the Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James level, but I think an easy first-round pick in this class. I think an easy top 20 player in this class and someone who's going to be a really good player for a long time.
Yeah, like I said, I'd halt the generational talk with him considering, like I said before, Derwin, Kyle Hamilton, and Eric Berry. And even, like I said before, guy next year, Caleb Downs, is going to be in that grouping, I think. That's how good that guy is. But Malaki Starks is still an excellent prospect, who I think I still have as a top 15 overall player on my big board right now. So he's still very much worth a first-round pick.
I mean, we comp him to Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard's
an all-pro.
He's made 2 first-team all-pros, and he's still really good in his early 30s with the Bears. He's got almost 30 career interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about if he even hit that level, a Kevin Byard level, you nailed it on a top 20 pick.
Yeah.
Right? I think I don't see any issue with that. And again, I think the tape and the nuance to Stark's game is really the appeal there.
Absolutely. All right, that wraps up our final position ranking for the 2025 NFL Draft, our top 10 safeties in this draft. We still have more content coming, though, surrounding the NFL Draft. Next week, on Monday, we are doing our very much anticipated all-eligible mock draft. If every college football player was eligible in a mock draft, where would they go? So we're talking Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, of course, from this year. We're talking Jeremiah Smith. We're talking Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, all these guys, Caleb Downs from next year, Arch Manning from next year as well. Everyone's available to be picked. How would a mock draft go? We're doing that next Monday. We got our top 100 big boards coming out next week as well.
Yeah, I'm going to start working on that now that we're done with all the position ones.
I can finally do
piecing that together. Yep.
So we're going to do that as well next week, and of course it'll be draft week right after that. So plenty more draft content coming on this channel, and then of course more college football content coming on this channel as well. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that good stuff. Our producers back there, and Tyler and Quinn for Dalton Washman. I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Monday for our all-eligible mock draft.